All right, we're here with Mr. George Ingram today. George is past president and owner of Nashville Record Productions, and here to talk some today about our friend John Eberle that's being honored. So, George, give me a little bit of background detail on you and how you met John and how he got into town.
Well, I went to Nashville Tech back in 1969, and during that time I was studying electronics and ended up meeting a guy named Ken Place, which started Nashville Record Productions. Ken was from Lima, Ohio, and had moved to Nashville and was opened up Nashville Record Productions and was basically doing custom mastering. And Nashville Record Productions was the first independent mastering studio in Nashville. All of the other mastering was affiliated either with Columbia or RCA. A lot of the independents didn't want the major labels to hear what they were doing before they released it. So it was fitting that an independent mastering studio come into town and take up and work with the independents, which is what Nashville Record Productions did.
What year did Ken start that?
Ken started it in 1965.
Okay. And then you came along at what point?
I came along. Ken, unfortunately, had a heart attack and passed away. And at that point, there were stockholders in the company, and they needed somebody to take over the reins and run it. So that's where I came into the picture. So I actually bought a large portion of Ken's stock in the company and started running it in 1972.
And what was your background in lacquer mastering?
I was a trainee under Ken Place.
Okay.
And Ken went to the Conservatory of Cincinnati. He was basically a music teacher, specializing in piano. And he kind of got off into cutting dubs and stuff on old Reco cuts for the kids that he was teaching the music class to.
A little bit of a side note here, but we were talking just a minute ago about Bob Malloy from Belmont. And while I was still in school there, somebody gave us an old Presto cutter. Would that have come from you guys by any chance?
I believe that was one of the old lathes that we had. Either that or there was 2 or 3 people that had some old lathes that gave them away. Whether the one we had a Presto and we had a Reco cut. Now, whether those are the ones that ended up at Belmont, I'm a little unsure. But you know, once the disc mastering started increasing in popularity, more lathes were built. You know, with Neumann and Westrax coming into the marketplace with really high-end equipment, the Prestos and the Reco cuts were more relegated to like song demos and things like that.
You just said that you had quite a relationship with Bob Malloy for a while, and I finally put that together that you had Presto, and we wound up with a Presto up there when I was in school way back, as somebody rudely reminded me last century.
But yeah, I mean, Bob and I had a really good relationship. A lot of the things that they recorded there at Belmont, we actually did the manufacturing through Nashville Record Productions, and at that time, we worked with Belmont on doing not only vinyl, but also cassette tapes and CDs. And we tried to be very involved with Belmont and Bob in the music department over there. And had tours come through the studio from time to time.
Right. Now, just while we're here visiting this, was there any kind of a formal arrangement between you and United Record Pressing?
Yes, some of the owners of United Record Pressing were actually stockholders.
Okay.
John Dunn and Ozell Simpkins. There was an attorney, a gentleman named Joe Talbot, which was on the CMA board.
Right.
And so that was how we got a lot of business, was through the pressing plant and through our connections in the music business. We got a shot at a lot of major label stuff.
Okay. Well, let's visit with Mr. Eberle here for a minute and how you guys came to meet, how he got to town, and what his formal training was through, I guess, I'm assuming that was with you guys.
Well, yes. In other words, John Eberle came to Nashville because his father was transferred from New Jersey to here, and his dad worked with Schrader Valve, which makes valve stems, all types of specialty valves. And so John ended up moving here. He worked at a company called Winter Boats, which made fiberglass boats for a while. And there he met a lady named Alma Cato. Alma ended up coming to work for me, and that's how I got introduced to John. And
67?
no, actually, that would have been 1972, I do believe, 71 or 72. And so Nashville Record Productions was expanding very fast, and we bought a lathe out of Pittsburgh, a company called WRS, and went up and got it, and added a cutting system, updated the system, and we were looking for somebody to actually run that lathe. And so John had come to us probably 6 months prior to that, and we had a mono cutting system. We were doing a lot of mono stuff, which was basically like the Ralph Emery shows, T. Tommy Cottrell, a lot of syndicated radio shows. And so John was working on the radio shows. And when we bought the new system, we actually put him on the stereo cutting system, which stereo was a big deal back then. And from that, between myself and a gentleman named Larry Bowden, which you probably know very well, we gave him the very basics of disc cutting and stuff, and John picked it up and was really enthused about it, and read all the books, and really got involved in it.
Now, had his fascination with Edison cylinders and other manufacturers, that type, had that started prior to him coming to work?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And that was one of the reasons that I considered John, was because of his love for recorded music in almost any form, whether it was cylinders, 78s, as we used to say, like Thomas and Edison, from tinfoil to stereo. So, I mean, he was very interested in it, top to bottom.
Right. Okay. What type of work did you guys, obviously did work from Nashville, but did you guys have customers from across the country, across the world?
Absolutely. We, a lot of the independent studios, in the Southeast, we actually went out and talked to the studios, brought them to Nashville. We actually had a conference going called Nashville Audio Exhibition, and we would invite people in. We had people like Harrison, people from Sony, Electro Voice, all types of studio people come in showing their equipment, and that's how we got introduced to a lot of these independent studios. And we'd follow that up, and because a lot of these guys were doing very independent stuff, and they needed somebody to do the manufacturing. And with that manufacturing, of course, came the mastering. Like I said, we cultivated that business because we were an independent mastering studio, and like I said, a lot of these people that were doing the studio work was knowledgeable about studio work, but were just, getting into it and had very little knowledge of the actual manufacturing process of what happens once the recording is done. Then you've got to take it from the master tape and capture it on the vinyl, and that's where we came in. We very much specialized in making those tapes sound as good as possible on vinyl, and it won us a lot of business. And I think all the mastering people that was doing vinyl cutting were doing the same thing. I mean, they were doing EQ, limiting, whatever enhanced the project for that final living room experience was what we was looking for.
Right. And that's when mastering was mastering for a purpose of
Absolutely.
optimizing it going to a
Yes.
mechanical medium.
Yes, yes. It was not only a format conversion going from analog tape to analog, physical analog grooves, but there was some artistic values in there also.
Any funny stories you can relate about John?
Well, John was quite the character, and a lot of times he was accused of, if you asked him what time it was, he'd tell you how to make a watch. And he was a real conversationalist, as you know, you was around him. And I think some of the probably more humorous stuff was we did a project where we put 6 grooves on a side of a record, which was unheard of at that time. And there was times when John would leave the studio screaming, "Stop it, you can't make me do this anymore," because it was a very frustrating project. Took about 6 months to get it done.
I just recently read about a project doing that, and I had never thought about it. It might have been, was it Wes that did that? Did Wes do one?
Well, I've done several. I think that the one that John did that had 6 grooves per side, which was a horse racing record, and the whole theory of that horse racing record was, there was 6 grooves all starting at different points and ending at different points. So if you had a turntable, an automatic turntable, it would just come over and sit down and play through whatever groove randomly it picked, and it had a different horse win at the end. And it was quite the challenge.
So there was a method, there was a reason for the madness.
Oh, yeah, there was a reason for the insanity other than just doing it because it can be done.
Right. Okay.
But, I've been involved in, you may have seen some vinyls that had etchings on them. And that was a process that I came up with. And we've been doing those for since 2000. And, so we were always into special things, colored vinyl, anything that made that package more attractive. Colored vinyl, spot varnish on record jackets, die-cut record jackets, embossed, you name it. We tried to make our custom products the best they could be.
Now,
and part of that was John and Larry and all the other guys that were in mastering. Al Smith, Glenn Bullard, which was chief engineer.
So go down the list of who all, during yours and John's time there, who were the engineers at NRP?
Well, let's see, we had Mike Bradley, Jim Lloyd, Al Smith, Doug Lawrence, of course Larry Bowden, John Eberle, Benny Quinn.
And you?
Yes. They didn't let me in the mastering room much because I was too busy pushing a pencil, but a lot of times if I had special projects I was working on, I'd come in at like 6 in the morning and get it done before the 8 o'clock mad rush started. But yeah, I was very, very much, I love cutting records.
So is NRP still in the same building?
No, NRP moved back in 2016, and United Record Pressing enlarged their pressing plant and moved to Allied Drive. And so we made arrangements with them to rent some space there and moved out to Allied with them. But prior to that point, we had been at 469 Chestnut Street. We moved there in the spring of 1973 and was there until 2015.
Okay. And then you recently sold the company.
Yes, I sold the company. I'm, like all of us, age finally catches up with you. And so I had a gentleman named Wes Garland that had worked with me for about 10 years. And Wes came to me through the Conservatory of Music out in Arizona, and I brought him on as an apprentice. He had taken, all the music courses and stuff, and was looking around for a place to fit. And Wes had a great love for vinyl. It very much reminded me of some of the other engineers that I'd had. One of the basic things, if you're going to be cutting vinyl records, you got to love it. And if you don't love it, then you're not going to be good at it.
Yeah. There is no undo.
No, there is no undo, right? Or as we used to say, vinyl is final.
Right. Well, as we're wrapping this up, any other stories you want to relate about John, and would you want to send a message to John? I'm sure he'll get to see this at some point.
Well, I'd just like to say, John, I hope your health gets better, and we were always a good team, and we had our ups and downs, but anytime you work with somebody 27 years, it all can't be perfect, but it all worked out in the end.